Kia ora koutou, Markie here, with the camera the right way up, which is never a good idea, because it usually means fingers in front of the lens. So, yes, if you're new to this channel, it's a bit different. It's idiosyncratic. It might not be to your tastes, and these review videos are my most idiosyncratic and my most self-indulgent. Really, a lot of the videos that I do are, quite important stuff, which is about kind of helping people and getting important messages out to people. But these reviews are pure self-indulgence, really. I watch something and I just feel compelled to talk about it, and share it with the viewing public, should they be brave and tenacious enough to watch through one of these videos. So I call this series Earley's Late Reviews. Or I actually call it Earley's Late ND Reviews. So there's quite a lot in that title. So Earley is my surname, and they're late reviews because I tend to review things that were made and broadcast years ago. Particularly, this is a good example. And ND, neurodiverse. So I have very poor, what they call executive function and working memory. So I'm terrible when I actually watch programs. I miss loads, and I don't recognise one character from one scene into the next and things like that. I never remember anything. I never remember actors' names or anything like that. So my reviews are pretty bad. They're not reviews aimed at kind of people that have not watched something and might be interested in watching it. They're reviews really for fellow travellers, people who've also watched this and might be interested in another opinion on it. So there will be spoilers, and I don't usually tend to give much of a kind of plot summary or anything like that. But I will say, fantastic journey. So I believe it was made in '76, broadcast in '77, and as with many of these things, they were going to continue, but they didn't. They finished at the end of one series, and lots of things went wrong, which they had to kind of compensate for. So lots of things to say, so get comfortable. Remember that really my videos are podcasts with a bit of video. You don't kind of have to sit and look at these videos. It's just my kind of ugly little mug. I might raise my eyebrows in a wry fashion from time to time, but you're not missing anything if you just listen to these as podcasts. So go and do the dishes and listen to this while you do the dishes. It'll be marginally less boring than doing the dishes without listening to the video. So okay, the fantastic journey. So I have a thank you to another YouTuber who's Terry, whose channel link I'll put down at the bottom, because I've been trying. I watched this series as a child. Had very vague memories of it, but was always wanting to find it again. And it's interesting, I've also had some false memories about it, which is kind of I remembered some things about it that didn't actually happen. So that says a whole lot about memory. That is how memory is. We can fantasize about something, and that can hold the same degree of kind of reality, if you like, in terms of a memory. So we can remember a fantasy as if it was reality. So yeah, I remember watching this as a kid and being quite transfixed by it. And also I was doing some psychological work, as many of you know, I'm a psychotherapist. So I was using metaphor and so one of the things that therapists often do is they use metaphor, story. So you go, fingers in front of the lens. Metaphor, story, different ways to achieve a kind of therapeutic end. And I wanted to do some kind of exploratory stuff to get to the bottom of something. And I used the context of this TV series, or my sketchy memories of it, as a method of doing it. So I imagined sending a team of people into the land where this series is set, in order to kind of explore and find out some of the unknown things about my past. So I visualize sending these people off under, not expecting them to come back in a hurry, kind of send them, expecting them maybe to come back years later, kind of thing, with some answers after having had adventures. It's a kind of a psychological journey and kind of technique, really. So it's got a lot of personal meaning for me. And just recently I was searching around for it again, and I came across Terry's channel, talking about some various sci-fi TV programs, and it listed this one. That's it. I've got it. So I found the series. So and I've just finished watching it, and I kind of wish I'd done a review episode by episode actually, because they're all. It's very, very idiosyncratic, this program. Okay, so the plot summary for those of you who might not have watched it. So it's a scientist and family and colleagues are in the Bahamas, Caribbean, wherever the Bermuda Triangle is, and they get kind of there's this kind of strange storm, and they end up kind of shipwrecked because they're in a boat, by the way. They're about to do some sort of sciencey thing. It's a bit unclear exactly what they're doing, and they get washed ashore on this land which seems to be massive, and there's not supposed to be any land there. No sizable islands or anything like that. And they start journeying from one place throughout this land and find that it's all very weird. And it's not consistent. That's one of the many. I mean, it's Swiss cheese. This whole series really is. It's got a charm, but it's totally Swiss cheese. So it starts off. They're in a zone where there's all different kind of animals from all different kind of parts of the world, all living side by side. And so instantly you get the message that they're in some kind of strange zone where time zones and physical zones are all kind of muddled up. But that thing about the animals from all the different regions kind of seems to disappear. And then they find that they can go from one specific zone into another by walking through these kind of hidden doorways. And they also find out that you can get to this place called Evo Land, which is a place where you can find your way back home. And that's on the far east of this land. So they're journeying for Evo Land. Which is a funny name, isn't it? It makes me think of Evo Stick, the glue, or Emo Land, kind of. So first of all, they're kind of followed by this mysterious guy who's dressed as a kind of a native kind of tribes person. Not quite sure why, because later on he reveals that he's somebody from the future. And was masquerading as that. So whether it was kind of a cautious kind of thing or not, I don't know. But in later episodes, he's usually not that cautious. So that was kind of a bit odd. Kind of seemed a bit unnecessary. But and he's a character called Varian, and he's from the future, and he is a musician. And in that kind of era, musicians are also healers. And this is the bit that I remember from from my childhood. Is that he has this device, fingers in front of the lens again, so I should never do the camera the right way up. I always pay a price for it. There's a kind of pronged device, it's got these two prongs, like a kind of tuning fork kind of thing, a giant tuning fork, but maybe some kind of crystalline substance with which you can kind of concentrate thought and presumably sound waves or God knows what really, and produce effects which can be healing. can be used for military purposes, but I don't think it actually can kill people. I don't know. That's what I remember from this series. The other thing, there were three things that I remember from this early series from watching it as a child, and that was the only one that was correct. Okay, so this device, this pronged thing that this character Varian, who comes from the future, has, which can kind of heal and do all kinds of other things. One of the characters I remembered, but misremembered. Okay, so is Roddy McDowall, who was classically famous for Planet of the Apes, which I love. An amazingly prolific actor. Really worked. This guy. He's no longer with us, sadly. But I misremembered him, and I got him mixed up with the guy that I noticed, because I'm quite auditory and I notice voices more than faces. I don't actually remember faces very well at all. And I don't usually recognise famous people. They pass me by in real life and when I'm watching things. So I got him mixed up because I was thinking about he's got an very unusual voice, with the guy who does the voice for the car Kit in Knight Rider. Very distinct voice, and Roddy McDowall's voice is very distinct. I can get a sense of a similarity between those two voices, but there's not much of one really. So I've gone off on a bit of a tangent with that one. And the third thing I remember, which is because I've just finished watching the whole series, and this wasn't in it, was some kind of open top vehicle that they were moving around in. I have a distinct memory of that, but that wasn't in it. There's almost no vehicles in the whole of this series. So that's odd. Am I conflating some other series, or did I completely imagine that, or did I dream that when I was a child? Or very odd. Okay, so yeah, and I read read a little bit. I watched some other reviews and found out a little bit about this series. So it was some interesting things. That some of the people that worked on early Star Trek worked on this. They chopped and changed massively, so they got rid of a load of characters in something like the first or second episode, and they got back home to normal time Earth. But basically, I think they just wanted a different kind of group of characters, more diverse. So we get invested in these characters, and then they suddenly kind of disappear. That's at the point where they're in Atlantis, as Atlantis seems to exist in this time zone. And the Atlanteans, who are hostile to them at first, send their friends home, but keep them for some evil purposes. I can't remember what it is now. But then they say that their equipment is burnt out and needs fixing, and they can't send the rest of the team, the rest of the crew back, which doesn't kind of make sense, because you think they could just... Because they then kind of, make friends with the Atlanteans and deal with all the corruption in their society, and so they could have just stayed there and waited for them to improve and fix their zapping people back to their own time zone technology, rather than having to go through all the time zones to find this Evo stick land, which they go off to do. So yeah, Swiss cheese and very twisty turny plots, but basically I think they wanted to dump a whole bunch of characters and keep some of the ones that they liked, and add in a more exotic character who is this woman who's a half Atlantean and half alien. She's called Liana. And she's got this cat the cat's a bit magic, and she can talk to this cat. And then they lose her at the end as well. She kind of disappeared. They say, oh yeah, where is she? Oh yeah, she had to stay behind a bit longer. Shall we wait for her? Oh no, never mind, let's go on without her. So crazy stuff, really. Lots of kind of funny things in this as well. So that there are these enslaved Atlanteans. So you've got this kind of brain in a jar kind of that's running Atlantis. It's got kind of a brain that kind of pulsates like lungs. It's that kind of a lung brain that's in a jar that controls the whole of the Atlantean society, and lots of people are enslaved. And you get this scene in a building, kind of hydroponic kind of farming, where they're kind of growing these plants, and you get a small kind of flower bed, if you like, or plant bed, with about 15 people, all these slaves, tending these plants, and there just kind of seem to be loads of people tending to very few plants and kind of around the clock, and then some of them drop with exhaustion from tending, and all they're doing is kind of like spraying them occasionally with something, or kind of prodding at the soil. It seems to be if you're going to be a slave, that can be a very relaxed kind of type of slave labour, really, when there's a whole team of you and all you're doing is just sort of tending one plant for the whole of your shift. It's very bizarre, really. But I was kind of watching this, I had to watch through the whole series because I just wanted to recapture this bit where there's this open top vehicle, which of course I never was not in there. So I did enjoy it. It's kind of fun. It's one of those things you kind of enjoy because of the flaws, rather than in spite of the flaws. And so many weird things about it, really, and quite derivative. So I think the device that I was talking about, the prong device that's used for kind of healing, is pretty much a kind of a sonic screwdriver. So I don't know whether they consciously or unconsciously nicked that from Doctor Who. Although the sonic screwdriver in kind of post-hiatus Doctor Who is much more kind of connected with kind of psychic and amplifying the mind and that kind of thing than I think in early Doctor Who. In early Doctor Who, it's more like a device almost you would imagine would have switches on it, really, although you don't really see the switches. So it's a little bit like kind of... It's almost like they borrowed the idea of the sonic screwdriver from Doctor Who, and then with foresight used it in a way that it was used much later in the Doctor Who series. So that's quite interesting. So the themes are interested in this. So Varian, who's the guy from the future, he's very new agey, and he comes from a kind of place where peace and harmony are raining and all the problems have been solved and energy healing is a thing, and he talks about auras and stuff like that. So it's kind of real kind of nod to a new age. It's very prescient actually, because people back in 76, 77, people didn't talk about energy and auras. Hardly any. A few did, but very rare. So that was very ahead of its time. It was kind of ahead of its time in a way, in that you've got a black character there who is high status because he's a doctor. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting because he's also kind of the hot-headed one, and occasionally his kind of grammar goes out the window, and he talks, ain't got no type, kind of double negatives and things like that. So in a way, he's quite a working class kind of character, despite the fact that he's supposed to be a doctor. So it's good, really, for its time, to have a black character as a high status, as in, he has become a doctor, but he's very much kind of a boy from the hood kind of thing, and that's kind of, that's in his character. Although he's a very decent character, he is often the hot-headed one, or at times a hot-headed one. And a bit like, I suppose, Star Trek. Star Trek was way ahead of its time in terms of having characters of different races on the bridge, in the command, and female characters in command. But a bit like Star Trek, I mean, is this an exploitation series? I mean, women in this, and particularly the character Liana, they are the length of the skirts they're wearing is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of how they managed to kind of, they must have had to do loads and loads of takes as not to have not to have had too risque camera angles. They must have been a nightmare to film, really, because the ridiculously short skirts, and that's with a lot of the female characters, and also a lot of the female characters, their décolletage is very, very revealing. It's somebody's wet dream, I think, putting this together. But was that exploitative, or is it actually thinking the male characters are the same? I think the male characters are kind of, there's a lot of bare chests or semi-bare chests, and quite a lot of kind of eye candy for people of any sex or sexuality. So I guess it goes across the board. And you got a lot. They address lots of themes, like there's a scene where it's kind of where men have enslaved women, and then the women try and rebel. I think that's got Joan Collins in that scene. I'm terrible for noticing actors, and I think that's got Joan Collins in that scene. Amazing, really. So it kind of addresses these issues, but the portrayal of women is, very very sexual, which is kind of quite interesting. And also they depict all kinds of different cultures and from different planets and different times. But in many of them, not all, it does change a little bit, but in many of them, the women have got short skirts. The men have got trousers, the women have got these short skirts. And Liana kind of, quite interestingly, kind of wears tights as well. In Atlantis, they had pantyhose, obviously, which she wears on and off. I think, probably a good idea because it helped them cover up her decency. But that was kind of a bit of an odd one, really. Sometimes the effects in this are terrible. So there's a bunch of green people that live in a marsh, and they're like, awfully done. So what else do I want to say? Oh, the music's really kind of interesting, both the theme music and the incidental music. So the theme music, which is nothing to speak of, it's a hompy-pompy kind of thing. It's got the weirdest bass on it. I think it's like Sid Vicious playing bass on this, because the bass is all over the place. It doesn't seem to be. It seems to be random bass notes. And the incidental music, it's got an effect in there which I think is achieved. Being a failed guitarist and a failed video vlogger that puts his thumb in front of things, I think this effect is by, so if you get a guitar, particularly an electric guitar, and you go up to the machine head, which is the bit where all the nuts are at the top, and at that point the strings go over a bridge, and so for that route, and so in between the bridge and the nut, where you tighten them and loosen them, and lots of technical language here. So that's the point where the string is, it's very tight, it's very tightly wound there, so it's a very high note and a very kind of metallic, twangy note. And it goes ding, 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 ding. And it's a kind of sound that Portishead used. There's a song, was it Nobody Loved Her Like You? Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, that's my rendition of a Portishead song. Now, if anyone can tell me what that Portishead song is, because I don't know, that would be a special prize coming to you. I'll send you some more free videos on science fiction series reviews from obscure TV series, badly remembered and badly reviewed, that only you can watch exclusively. That'll be your reward for identifying which Portishead song that is. So that was quite, I don't know, I think that was quite ahead of its time. You could probably tell me, that other people were using that effect and it's in this and it's in that, but it doesn't make me think of Portishead, which came years and years afterwards. So yeah, music, a bit weird. What else is weird? Oh, Fred is the black character, the doctor, and he's got a very small doctor's bag, and at one point he says there's a poison, concocted by this strange, culture, and he reckons that he can identify it, analyze it, and produce an antidote if only he had his doctor's bag with him, and he's a doctor from 1976. So, you take a whole, specialist kind of toxicology lab probably weeks to kind of do the task that he does with something that he would have in his doctor's bag if he could but get to it. So I kind of, that tickled me a little bit as well. So sexploitation, kind of so many things in this. So we've got the kind of new age, kind of prescient thing towards new age. It's a little bit like Highway to Heaven, the Michael Landon thing is that they kind of, each episode, they kind of meet hostility or some jeopardy, but actually on some level or other, there's some rapprochement, and and the baddies kind of come good, or they see the error of their ways, or it's a bit kind of schmaltzy, and sometimes it's really facile, and people that so like in the last one, somebody dies and it's almost like, oh never mind, it's all good now. There's a new baby to replace the son that was murdered, so everything's all right, never mind, not to worry. All's well that ends well. The weirdest one though is the character of Willoughby. Now Willoughby is the Roddy McDowall character, and he's living in this. He's created this kind of Stepford Wives kind of. There's a lot of. Now this is something, if I was a proper reviewer, and I knew stuff and I remembered stuff and I could be bothered to research stuff, I could check the kind of timelines and things and the and find out for sure. But things like, did this come out before the Stepford Wives? Did it come out after the Stepford Wives? There's also an episode in there which is very like The Wicker Man, which involving this sacrifices to this volcano. But the episode where they meet with Jonathan Willoughby, who's the Roddy McDowall character, who then becomes one of their companions. He starts off as the villain, and he's living with this family who initially we don't know are androids. So I did say there'd be spoilers, and that becomes apparent later. But at one point he says to who we think is his wife, do that again and I'll literally take you apart. Has this kind of sinister domestic violence feel to it. But then he means literally take you apart and reprogram you because you're an android. Now, he attempts to trick Liana into remaining with him because he's got the hots for her, and separate her from her companions, who he is quite happy to allow to die in the swamp. And then he kind of slips her some roofies, so makes out that she's not there when they come back to get her. And eventually, when all else fails, he gives her the choice that either she can go with them and leave him, but they will have to die. And in the end, something goes wrong with all the androids and what have you. And they, and then again, in this kind of facile way of making good too easily, and happy endings and everything, ending kind of nicely. They say, we knew you weren't going to really kill it was just a threat, why don't you join us? And he becomes one of their merry band. Um, and which I'm kind of glad about because he's great. I love that character. I think he's the most fascinating character in it. I love him as a character. But it's like, actually, what he did was despicable. He so effectively, he is trying to make this woman his wife. She's not keen. She's not giving consent. And basically, he's trying to isolate her from her companions, lie to her, drugs her. So these are all the kind of sinister, non-consensual sexual behaviours, which really kind of very worrying. But they're kind of like, oh, never mind. And he turns out to be this really nice character who is quite moral. He's got his flaws, and occasionally, what I like about what they do with him afterwards is they kind of put his character to the test because they're a bit suspicious of him, and he's always the one that acts as pretends to go along with the enemy. Sometimes isolating himself from the group, and then they think that he's betrayed them, but actually he's working for the higher good and for their interests. But actually, he's kind of totally reprehensible character with what he's doing, and they say, oh, well, just because, you weren't serious that you would kill us all, you can be our friend. Really bad message in there. So what a weird series, really. Really bad effects as well. Lots of author. I go through each. I really wish I'd done one for each episode now, but I probably would have. That would have got boring, wouldn't it? Really, you wouldn't have sat through that. Probably aren't even sitting through this at 26 minutes. So yeah, and yeah, they're still. So the series ends early, and they're still wandering off trying to find their right time zone by moving from one place to the other. Oh, that's the other thing as well. Is they're carrying. They seem to be camping. For the most part, apart from when they meet people, and they all carry very small packs, which seem to have quite a lot in them, including sleeping bags. It's a shame they didn't have a vehicle really at one point, and they never seem to be too concerned about food. There's one scene in there where they're getting fed, and they're eating something like chicken legs, but they're massive, and I kind of was thinking, what is that? Is that an ostrich leg or something? So there's more. It's full of anomalies. It's full of it's Swiss cheese, full of holes. So the character Liana disappears for the last 2 episodes, and not too much is said about that. And of course the cat Silel, which is so fascinating, really, in so many ways. Mainly bad ways. I wouldn't, it's not something I would particularly recommend. This series. But I think there will be people like me that watched it as a child and have sketchy memories of it, and maybe a kind of a strange fascination with it. It's something to have a strange fascination with. Is it of its time? It kind of is that too much of a hackneyed phrase? It is kind of its time, but also you've got to think that what is it, Star Wars? Did that come out in 1977 or around about that time? Infinitely better, and in terms of the special effects and everything, and the story writing and everything really to this. So yeah, so there's my jumbled thoughts and unraveling as I speak. Just go back to kind of the sexualized aspects of it. I think that was something that they did back in the day. They certainly did it with Doctor Who, where really a program is more geared towards children, but they want to make it a family program. So they want the mums and dads to watch it. So they put a little bit of eye candy in to kind of grab the attention of everyone, which is bad as well, isn't it, really? I want to do some more videos on pornography and pornography dependency and pornography addiction and stuff like that. But one of the things I don't talk about so much really is how, effectively pornography is brought into marketing, and it's brought into lots of things to sell them. Which I really don't like. I mean, I talk a lot very seriously about the dangers of pornography, but I'm not actually anti-pornography, and I think we're never going to get rid of pornography. But I like pornography to have to be labelled as pornography. I don't like pornography to slip into advertising. I don't like pornography to slip into music. I think it's fine to have erotica and erotic scenes where they are appropriate, but I don't like the way people will use sexuality as just a way of hooking people into things. But that's a whole subject for a whole other video. I'm going to do some more. I want to do some more stuff around that, because that's just such a huge issue. I've done some videos on it, but I want to kind of bring things back to that. So look out for those. They'll be coming along soon. So I would have missed loads. So have a look in the comments, the description box below, because they'll be probably usually the most important points I'm going to make in these videos. I forget. If you want to know a bit more about neurodiversity, I've done lots of videos on that. Talking about poor executive function and poor working memory, and that will explain the reason why I shoot the videos in the way that I do. And I usually have the camera the wrong way around. And yeah, really. So if you sat through that, well done. 30 minutes of rambling about a terrible TV series that if you haven't watched already, or you didn't watch as a child, you're probably never going to watch again. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and I would love to hear from anyone that's also watched this nonsense and hear your thoughts on it. Polite thoughts only. Never any excuse for rudeness, either in real life or online. But friendly, nice comments, even if you disagree and want to share a different view. As long as you can be nice about it, fantastic. Love all that. So, Rangimarie. Thanks for watching.